Yeah. Okay.
Let's keep it clean.
Last time we were discussing the very end of Mishnah 6 in chapter 1. We talked about the difficulty of what it means to judge somebody favorably, to give them the benefit of the doubt, and so on. And unless somebody has anything special, additional, we're going to go to the next Mishnah. Okay? Very good. So Mishnah 7, Nitai the Arbelite. Nitai ha'arbeli. Will somebody do us the honor of reading, please? And let's
I will
pay attention to possible differences of translation.
Yeah, my translation,
go ahead.
comes from Rabbi Shapiro, Rabbi Shapiro, so it's a little bit non-traditional. Anyway, he says this: Nitai of Arbel teaches, distance yourself from a bad neighbor, do not collaborate with evil, and do not despair of justice.
Okay, good. Anybody have another translation that they think sheds a different light or additional light, whatever? Yeah, Geraldine.
The only difference is be not a partner with an evil person.
Okay, that's the middle one.
Middle one.
The middle clause. Okay, very good. Yes, John.
Mine's different. I'm using the Safaria one. Nitai the Arbelite used to say, keep a distance from an evil neighbor, do not become attached to the wicked, and do not abandon faith in divine retribution.
Okay, so good. So I think that actually and Sarita's now got a
slightly different one. So keep thee far from a bad neighbor, associate not with the wicked, and abandon not the belief in retribution.
Good. Okay, so I think that from my hearing these different versions, I think that mostly everybody is pretty much has a consensus for the first of these three statements, and pretty much I think everybody has a consensus for the last of the three statements. But we have a couple of differences in how to read the middle one. So let's just hold on to that for a second, and let's go step by step. So once more, just to say what we're already used to, three-part statement, right? As we've had again and again and again. Again and again and again. 3 times I just said that. Because that's the standard way of nailing something down. So the first one is keep your distance or be far away from a bad neighbor. Okay, so anybody want to start riffing on that?
Just stay away from when you see people doing bad things. Stay away.
So come on, we can be closer readers than that. There's a certain kind of paradox to this statement.
Oh, because it's the neighbor, and how do you say?
Right. The neighbor is by definition the person who's right next to you. Right. This is not the way we translate neighbor in the Torah. Love your neighbor as yourself. This is the literal word shachein, which means the person who lives right next to you, right next door to you. So we have a little bit of a there's a sharpness to this, right? That at the same time that this person may be in physical proximity to you, stay away from them.
Yes, so it's not ethical staying away.
So I'm just, what does it mean? I mean, in what way is the neighbor bad? So the neighbor could be doing things like John says that are bad, could therefore be bad.
Now I can't hear you.
You can't hear me? I'm trying to define what is meant by bad. So
good.
John suggested that bad maybe was someone who was doing bad things, so therefore you might be influenced to be bad. But another possibility, and I'm thinking of it sort of as sort of the opposite of love thy neighbor, is that somebody who's a really irritating neighbor who who does things that maybe bother you, maybe don't rush over there to take them to task, but just
you're fading out again.
So a bad neighbor could be someone who's doing bad things, bad influence, therefore, but also a bad neighbor could just be the person who they play loud music, they do irritating things. And so, maybe this sort of goes along with judging people charitably. Don't rush over there and hound them or something, but maybe give them the benefit of the doubt. So I'm trying to grapple with what does it mean to be a bad neighbor?
Good. And an interesting twist that you give at the end, where instead of looking at the distancing as negative, right? You're trying to be influenced by the previous Mishnah and say, okay, so
Positive.
bide your time a little bit. Don't keep calling the police, for when they're causing trouble. Also, just to highlight, bad neighbor to me, or a bad neighbor. They're really a bad neighbor on the street. They're a bad neighbor, or they're not a good citizen, or something like that. Yeah. So a couple of people had their hands up. Bill, and then Eileen.
Yeah, Rabbi Shapiro has a sort of typical kind of note to that one, and he says a bad neighbor sows discord through gossip, slander, and lies. So he's not talking about somebody who lets his bushes grow over onto your property, or who who runs over your hose with his car. He's really talking about somebody
Which is actually okay.
who does bad things. Yeah, you say that because nobody's ever run over your hose.
The bushes thing actually gets me. When we walk around in Montclair and you can't walk on the sidewalk together because somebody's letting their hedge take over the entire sidewalk.
I once got a warning.
I find that annoying. Yes.
I once got a warning from the police in Caldwell. I had not a bush, but a plant with like long leaves.
And it went all the way to Caldwell?
Yeah, it went all the way to Caldwell, and it grew over the sidewalk a little bit. Somebody actually complained, and I got a note on my door saying you got to trim the plant back.
They were right.
So
Sorry, they were right. Yeah, Eileen.
Okay.
Well, in the Hebrew, does it say bad, or does it say?
Yes, the word is ra.
My translation is evil, and there's a big difference in my mind between a bad neighbor and an evil neighbor. There's a big moral difference.
So that's a good question about, and I think it's a question of degree. There's when we use the difference of good and evil, that sounds like really the extremes, the metaphysical difference between the good and the evil. Right, but good and bad is also a distinction. So we don't maybe think that bad sounds as bad, right? Bad doesn't sound as evil, but a bad person is a bad person. I was just reading something where a person said, "I think I did something that was bad, but I don't consider myself a bad person." Right, so they're using the word bad as evil. Right, as I want you to be a good person, and I don't want you to be a bad person. You would say let's say to somebody that you're teaching, or somebody that you're raising, or something like that. So yeah, evil is a lot more extreme in its sound. It's up to us to figure out how to read this. The standard way that we say, well, again, you've got bad. We've got too many words, or we've got bad, we've got evil, we've got wicked, right? So there's all kinds of words, and that opens us to interpretation. Yeah, John.
I think that it's not important to determine what evil or bad is. If you think the person's evil or bad, the idea is to keep a distance, right? So and distance obviously can't be physical because you live next door. So it's really some other kind of distance. And it's not necessarily to shun the person. It might be, as we've discussed, maybe to keep you from overheating and calling them bad or evil. Like if you think somebody's bad, just keep back a little bit. Don't confront them. Don't be their friend. Whatever. I don't know how to determine bad and evil, and who's qualified to judge that even. So
I think that was like the Supreme Court thing. I can't define it, but I know it when I see it.
When I see it.
So maybe it's like that. We have in our prayers. One more second, Josie. We have in our prayers in the beginning in the traditional prayer book, after we recite the various blessings for waking up in the morning and stretching ourselves, and God gives the rooster the ability to tell the difference between day and night. So we have all that long list of blessings, and then we say, "Thank you, God, you give us renewed strength every day." Hold on a second. And then we have we have this prayer. So I don't have the English in front of me, but it says, "May it be your will that you will save me today. Shetatzileni hayom ubechol yom me'azei panim u'mi'azut panim mi'adam ra, me'chaver ra, mi'shachein ra, mi'pega ra, mi'satan ha'mashchit, midin kasher, mi'bal din kasher, ben shu, ben brit, ben shenu, ben brit." May you, God, and this is like, again, this is right at the get-go of the day, before you've done all of your basic prayers. May you please save me from people who are obnoxious, or who are azei panim, who are out of control, who are arrogant, who are and azut panim, and from arrogance itself, or from disrespectfulness, right? People who are disrespectful, and also the quality of being disrespectful. Right? So there's an interesting connection there. When you start getting involved with somebody who's really obnoxious, it doesn't always bring out the best in you. You start getting into a shouting match maybe with them. So we say, please save me from that. Right? And then it says, "Me adam ra," from a bad, there's that word ra, from a bad, evil, wicked, however you want to translate it, from a bad human being. "Me chaver ra," from a bad companion, friend. "Umishachein ra," and from a bad neighbor, right? "Umipega ra," and from any bad incident, and misatan hamashchit, from the destroying Satan, midin kasher, mibaldin kasher, from a bad judgment, and from a bad litigant. May I not get involved in somebody who's arguing with me about stuff and making my life miserable. Ben shu, ben brit, ben shenu, ben sheno, ben. Whether this person is a member of the covenant
or not,
whether they're not a member of the covenant, please save me from this. So one of the first things we say in the morning is, there's a lot of difficult people out there. Please, God, save me from dealing with those people. It's not going to bring out the best in me, and it's just going to cause me so much agita and so much pain, and bring me down. And I just started this beautiful day, so I hope this beautiful day is not ruined by bumping into somebody. So it's a little bit of a warning message about seeing the possibilities that of the failings of other human beings, and how much they can cause us unhappiness on a regular kind of prosaic basis. The relationship between the previous Mishnah and this Mishnah has already come up. Sarita and John both tried to apply the end idea of the end message of Mishnah 6 of Yehoshua ben Prachia. Judge everybody favorably, give them the benefit of the doubt, and using that as a way to condition how we understand. Stay away from the bad neighbor. Some people see it as the opposite, that these two people are coming from two different angles, and this statement is trying to balance out the other one. Yeah, give people the benefit of the doubt, but don't get sucked in. Don't get sucked into then making excuses for people when they're doing things that don't smell right, and stay away from it, as opposed to saying, no, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. So that's the way. And again, the business of Pnei Lecha Chaver, right? Find yourself a companion. Find people to hang out with. And then the next Mishnah, but watch out who you're hanging out with. Watch out. Be judicious, and don't be unthoughtful, or don't stop using your judgment. Right? On the one hand, you're supposed to judge people favorably. On the other hand, what kind of judgment actually should you be applying? Yeah, John.
So
Wait, Josie, I skipped over.
Yes.
Wait.
I have a neighbor across the fence from my senior building, is a regular neighborhood.
Thank God for the fence.
And he mows his lawn and runs his grill and chops up the trees at the most inconvenient times in my life.
Maybe
And
send him over to Craig. Maybe he can chop up that tree so that the PSE&G people.
Yeah, he's got a thing where you chop up a tree. Anyhow, it's always around 5:30 at night, which for me is like the end of the day, and I wind down and I want peace and quiet, and it's noisy. And then I realize this guy goes to work. And the only time he can take care of his yard, which is pretty big, is in the early evening before it gets dark. So I tried to get myself to calm down about the noise by saying he's trying to take care of his property. And then that way he's a good neighbor. So if it annoys me, I'll just have to put up with it.
Good for you. Good for you.
He's trying.
Good
I'm
work.
trying to.
Yashikoa. Good work. Yeah, John.
So how does this help you? That's what I want to know. Because in some situations, like, so protest is really confronting your evil neighbor, isn't it? Isn't that what, when we go march against Trump, what else are we doing but saying you're bad and you need to change, and we're not keeping a distance. Like, so the problem for me is like, so how do I figure out what to do in any given situation? You know, like I can kind of give a little, you know, wait till I'm really mad, wait till it's really bad or really evil, or, you know, so if your neighbor is playing rock music in their garage band at 9 o'clock at night, okay, so maybe I can keep away from that. But if they're selling drugs, you know, in front of my property, then I'm going to confront them. You know, like So
that's where I would say don't confront them. Call the police.
Well, but you know what I'm saying. You're still not keeping.
No, but that's a big difference. That's why they're theoretically. I mean, this is, look, we're struggling with all this stuff. So your question, how does this help us? The simplest answer I would say is that it's helpful to make people think about these things. When people don't even think about them, then there is no help possible. Then people just fall into either habits or easy solutions or the worst non-thinking response. So what's helpful about studying this stuff is that if it raises a little bit more consciousness about the fact that this is complicated and that this is something that needs thought, that's already helpful.
No, I'm not saying it's not helpful. I just don't know still how to navigate.
It's not going to give you these are very general principles. It's not going to give you the step by step for any particular situation. We're going to eventually get to the second statement, which I think is relevant to the kind of questions that you're asking in another second or two. But I want to just put this out because I have no discipline. What can I say? We're struggling now with the whole question of where the police fit in our society. What does it mean to have a peacekeeping force, right? People dedicated to keeping peace. And how much power are they supposed to have? What kinds of issues are they supposed to address? How much force are they supposed to be applying to situations? These are excruciatingly difficult situations, difficult questions. And, when we use these kind of, blanket statements, defund the police, abolish the police, that expresses a real feeling that responds to a lot of abuses. But then you have people, in that same community who go, are you kidding? If it wasn't for the police, I would be dead. So to think about it and to keep on actually struggling with both sides is absolutely necessary if we're going to eventually make any kind of improvements. Otherwise, we're just going to completely trip ourselves over with extremes of one way or the other. Carney, you wanted to say something?
Well, I think it's to the same point. We're all confronted with this and dealing with the racism in others and the racism in ourselves. It's irrelevant to talk about who is racist and who isn't. It's a question of how you deal with people who express and behave in that way.
Right. So just to follow up, what I'm saying is about the police. The police, theoretically, a police force theoretically makes it possible for you to distance yourself from evil. If every time it was up to you to confront, if every single person had to be Clint Eastwood or had to be the vigilante that cleans up the neighborhood, again, we would be living in a society of chaotic carnage. So what makes it possible for a person to walk away from evil is if you have a system that has a mechanism that you can trust. So there's the imperative. Don't keep on taking this in your own hands. No, don't walk into the lion's den, because that's that's not going to help you, and it's not going to stop anything. Yes, Eileen. Yeah.
What about when you think of neighbors in the sense of a business or a corporation or a manufacturing, and you have polluters? Is that also an evil neighbor? And would that apply there, extrapolating it out a bit?
Right. Great question. This whole question of neighbor and proximity in the global village that we are creating as we speak becomes a much more urgent question than it used to be. In the old, more, whatever, pre-industrial societies, people lived with much less connectivity, right? So a neighbor was really a physically proximate neighbor. When a corporation is 100 miles away from you, upriver, but is pouring all of their toxic chemicals into the river, and then it comes down to you, then then neighbors become much more broadly defined, and that's what we're seeing today. The whole set of problems that we're having now is realizing that no, it can't be isolated in Wuhan, or it can't be isolated in the Gulf region or here or there. Everything actually now is becoming closer and closer and closer and impinging on all of us. I think that what you're saying is an important point. Yeah. So that's we're not gonna have too much time. We're gonna have to continue next time with this. But I think that that's a little bit, for me, of where this set of statements moves. I would see the first statement of these three statements as being a smaller scale statement. It's about the day-to-day interactions that every human being engages in, which mostly, unless you're again, I mean, obviously, if you're involved in global projects or something, but in the very simple kind of nitty-gritty daily life that I mentioned, that prayer, for instance, that you recite in the morning. When I start this day, please let me have a decent day. So that, I think, is mostly where I would go, how I hear the first statement. But now when we go into this middle statement, the statement that actually had the most interesting divergences of translations, I think that middle statement takes us like a quantum leap forward in terms of dealing with this stuff. And to Eileen's point before, the word that's used now instead of bad neighbor is shachen ra, is rasha. Rasha, right? Rasha means, in its associations, and we struggle with this, a thoroughly evil person, right? Or the wicked. Remember, Rasha is the name of one of the four children that we have in the Seder, right? The Rasha. And we always have difficulty with that because it's always hard for us to think, one of our own children could be thoroughly evil, and what makes it so thoroughly evil? So that's for another discussion. We've struggled with that many, many times. But if we take that actually as the basic direct connotation, then I think we're getting from that kind of like, annoying or just bad, but not on some kind of like essential or global level or some, the dimensions, I think, are smaller in the first one. In the second one, we're having the struggle with evil, and I think those are the kinds of things, John. I don't think your questions are so much about the neighbor necessarily. I think your questions actually fall much more into this second part. What do I do here? How do I confront these societal ills? How do I confront people that are organizing and have tremendous amount of power, and they're using that power to actually tear down human beings? So that's where the intimacy is not the issue anymore. Now the question is the force, a really evil
It's association, attached, it's like association.
Right. And then the word, right. So then there's the word attached. Attached in the Hebrew is al titchaber. Al titchaber means do not become a chaver of. So in the beginning, that's again, Mishnah 6, the previous one says, go find friends, make yourself friends, right? And now you could read this as a warning, watch out what kind of friends you make, right? And we know, and like I said, we don't have time. We're going to continue next time. But we know, for instance, that one of the strengths that let's say terrible cults or movements, the alt-right and so on, one of their strengths that they derive from is the desire for people to feel part of something, to be connected to something. And people that, let's say, don't succeed in finding friends or meaning or fitting into society, the disgruntlement of all of that ends up throwing them into a place where then they really feel accepted. They feel like they've got something meaningful to accomplish, and of course, it's horrors. So we can that, but that doesn't exhaust what this is all about. We will hopefully be able to take care of more of this exploration next time. Okay?
Yashikoah.
Yeshikoah.
Shikoah.